We are doing well. I'm just looking at your Twitter. You posted this about 20 minutes ago. It gets real today. First padded practice, 9 a.m. Hitting in camp has been much less in recent years, but the intensity does increase. So it's full go today in just about an hour.
Just about an hour. And I say that because, it's funny because way back in the day when I first started doing this, and even into the, early 2000s, depending on who was a coach, there was just a lot more hitting. And now there's still hitting. And even last year, it was a little bit more physical than it had been the previous couple of years. It's not what it was, but again, you're going to get some pops. And when you get those pops, guys are going to hit the ground. And so, like I said, the intensity absolutely increases.
Even though there hasn't been hitting, all the reporting is there's been a lot of chippiness, a lot of yapping, like the defensive linemen with the tight ends, with the offensive line.
But that happens every camp.
I mean, it does, but Rivera seems like he doesn't like it.
No, well, I think what he doesn't like is when guys respond a certain way. So I think in some ways he likes that. Like Montez Sweat has been one of the bigger ones that we've seen or heard, and it's noteworthy because I don't remember him being like that in his first 2 years. Now, last year, we were still close to the field, but you didn't hear him like this. So for me, it's a sign of his comfort level and growing in confidence that he is a lot more chippy. And so what Rivera will say, though, is guys are going to do that in the game. You have to know how to handle it. So I don't know that I don't think he minds a guy talking. It's how does a guy respond? And if you're responding by shoving a guy, well, in a game that could be 15 yards. So I think that's kind of what irks him a little bit.
So I know we're only 5 or 6 days into this, and sometimes we put a little too much stock into, drills and unpadded practices, that type of stuff. But give me the one player, in your opinion, that's been the standout, the one guy that you've noticed the most. If there is one. If there is one.
I think I think you can make the case for a couple guys, and I just named one in Montez Sweat. But the guy that I always go back to is Terry McLaurin. And because I think the guy is terrific. And he has a nice battle going on with William Jackson, the new corner. But McLaurin is just really good. And I enjoy watching him run his routes. And even if it's just an individual drill, the way he runs them, that's kind of the blueprint. And there are times where, and I kind of get a little bit geeky with this because we're allowed to videotape individual drills when they're just going through their position groups and some one-on-ones.
Okay.
So I'll watch him and then I'll go back at night and watch him again because I want to see what does he do that others don't do, or you know what I mean, or what separates him. And there are just a lot of little things that he's worked on, keeping his head straight, limiting. Just limiting footwork on a drill. Like it might take him 5 steps to get into a route versus 8 for somebody else. That's the difference between a catch and creating separation and not. And things like that. So I always enjoy watching him. But I will say, like I said, Montez Sweat's looked pretty good. And Chase's too, but Montez in particular I think is jumped out.
And, John, it seems like a lesser name that has jumped out to you. You mentioned this on your Twitter, too, is DeAndre Carter, the wideout, who should help with the return game as well. But it sounds like he's making an impact receiver-wise, too. Talk about Carter and what sort of impact he could have. And this is a guy who's well-traveled. I believe he's been on, 7 or 8 different rosters over 3+ years.
Yeah. He's always one of those guys where his previous team will say, yeah, if he comes back, we can develop him here, but he's going to be somewhere else. So, I think he's jumped out the last couple practices with a couple of nice catches, red zone catches, and that's been good for him. And he can play the slot, he can play some X. I don't think he's going to make a big impact as a receiver. If he's going to make the roster, it's going to be as a dual returner who can also then play receiver. So, you look at the guys ahead of him, well, who's he going to play over? Adam Humphries, no. Humphries looks good. McLaurin, no. Cam Sims, no. Curtis Samuel, if he's not healthy, then yeah, but no. But right now, no. De'Ami Brown, no. So, he's going to be a back-end receiver if he makes it, but it's the threat of the dual return that will help him earn a roster spot if he gets there. So, for me, a guy like that probably is looking at competing as much against guys from other spots as he is other receivers. So, and I say that because, if Danny Johnson is going to try and, be a returner, if he, how does he look? Is he going to be, and he's a cornerback, so would they keep Johnson as an extra corner or keep Carter as an extra receiver? That is often how it comes down to, because that receiver room is really crowded, and they still have guys they like Antonio Gandy-Golden, and you have to keep in mind that he was a fourth-round pick here a year ago, and he's a guy that I know people on that staff were the ones pushing for him to be drafted, and they're still here. So if Carter makes it, he's going to have to really show something as a returner who can help there in a really good way. And then also, if they needed him at receiver, he could go in and plug in there.
Talking to John Keim from ESPN.com covering the Washington football team training camp. All right, let's get to the thing that everybody wants to know about. That's quarterback. All right, let's just start with Ryan Fitzpatrick. A lot of people have expectations on Fitzpatrick. On this show, it's kind of split. Some have muted expectations. Some have great expectations. What have you seen from Fitz so far?
Yeah, I want to finish one thing on Carter. He's a very quick player, and that's one of his strengths. So just forgot to throw that out there. But with Fitzpatrick, I don't think he's been pretty good. I think he is what he is, at this point. I do think that he's cut down his interceptions over the last couple of years, and sometimes there's some times where I'd see him on film, some of the red zone throws, I think, were the picks were the big issue. So, it's going to be hard to tell right now where he's at with that, because one thing in practice, whether it's he or Taylor Heineke, sometimes you're going to throw a pick, and it's well, was it the receiver here? Were you trying something that in the game you wouldn't do? Forcing it into to Terry McLaurin to see what can he do with this ball? Can he go up and get this ball? So I say that because, last week there were a couple picks. Heineke's thrown a few picks. Fitzpatrick to me is clearly ahead.
Because of what?
Well, first of all, his experience. Taylor Heineke's started 2 games.
No. I understand that, but if you were just watching this independently and you didn't know, and they were just numbers.
Yeah, I would say. And here's the other thing. It's hard to just go by that, because one is facing 100% of the time facing starters.
Right.
The other is facing 90% of the time backups.
Right.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's always hard to say, and that's not a knock. It's just reality. But Fitzpatrick has a better arm. I think Heineke is really good at anticipating throws, right? I think he knows, because he even talked about this the other day, he knows he doesn't have the biggest arm, so he's got to get the ball out on time, and you see him doing that. There's a throw the other day where I don't remember if it was De'Ami Brown or Gandy-Golden, basically turn around and the ball's there. And, literally, and it went off their hands, because I think it surprised them how quickly the ball got there. But that's anticipation more than arm strength. And I think, Heineke is smaller. That doesn't help him, and so you always worry about the durability. But I also think the big separator right now, when you listen to the coaches, listen to the players, is Fitzpatrick's experience and his knowledge and the way that it helps them. And Terry McLaurin was talking about this the other day, how he said he feels like it empowers the receivers and it gives them more confidence, because they know if Fitzpatrick goes out there and sees a certain leverage, he's going to get them into a better look. Now, is that going to happen all the time? Well, no, but because nobody, can get that. But by and large, that's one thing they like. And the way he helps, Ron Rivera's talked a lot about how he helps younger guys develop because of that knowledge and just things he can tell them. And the way he talks to guys after plays, he'll watch Heineke take a rep sometimes with the ones, and Heineke's had a couple. He'll get a little bit of time with the ones in practice, and sometimes Fitzpatrick will watch a receiver run a route on a look, and he'll go talk to them afterwards about why they ran that route or what they could have done differently. And so things like that, that all that stuff matters. It's stuff that they talked about with Alex Smith that they felt helped them last year. So I don't think we're going to see a Pro Bowl quarterback this year here. And even when you talk to people there, it's like, this is the one thing that would concern me is that it's like, well, you just got to, play smart, manage the game, use your weapons, and basically don't screw it up. But the history there has been turnovers. So that, you wonder, is that going to mesh well? But so I do think that, he's ahead. And I think the other thing here with this is, for me, Heineke's got to throw a knockout punch in camp. And I don't think we're seeing
that. Is he clearly ahead of Allen, Heineke?
Would you be surprised if Heineke got cut?
Yeah, I would be surprised by that. Yeah,
okay.
I don't think he's done like that. I think he's still a guy that I'd want on my roster because I know how guys responded to him when he came in, and I know that he's going to be prepared. So if I put him in, I know I know that he's going to be able to handle X, Y, and Z. Now, could I see Allen sneaking in there later as a number 2? Yeah, but Allen was slowed in the spring by an ankle, recovering from his ankle injury. Now, he was out there, but he wasn't quite himself, and then he hurt his ankle again now. So I think that gives Heineke an edge there. I think one thing you have with all three of those guys are guys that know what they're doing out there. And I think we saw last year the differences between quarterbacks who knew what they were doing when they got in the field and those who did not.
Right.
And I think that's one thing they have in each guy.
So that first preseason game, I know we're more than a week away, but August 12th against the Patriots, now there's only 3 preseason games, so I don't know if that makes it more, if the starter plays more because there's one less. Would you expect Fitz to still play, maybe the first quarter and then Heineke the rest, or do you think Fitz will play more just because there's less preseason?
I honestly don't know because we didn't go through preseason games with Ron Rivera last year, so I don't know how he's going to handle them. We haven't gotten to the point yet where you start looking at breakdowns of who's going to play what. The trend in the league has been to play your starters a lot less, and especially if you're going to be playing 17 regular season games, I don't know that you're going to want them out there a whole lot. And, so I don't know how much he's going to play. Maybe a couple series. I also think that if you're really trying to see what you have in Heineke, that you're going to want to play him as much as possible to see how does he develop from the one playoff showing, right? So that would be my thought.
Hello.
No, it's a new situation for everybody, and that 17 try and limit whatever wear and tear you can on your starters.
All right, John.
You still there?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. We lost you there for a second. All right, real quick, just one other question. Yep. We were talking about Gibson. He is coming off of that toe injury or whatever. How's he looked? Do you expect him to have more of a load this year with Scott Turner? Do you think they're still going to use McKissick like they did last year? What are your expectations in the run game?
Yeah, he's looked. It's funny because there are sometimes he looks normal, and then sometimes you wonder, was there a twinge with that toe or anything like that? And it's not like he's not limping around. Here's the good sign for that. He hasn't had to sit out any practices or any drills. So it's not like they're sitting there trying to baby that toe back. They feel like it's back, and he feels like it's back. And even in the spring, he felt like he would say when it gets to 100%. So, but, and there, I think what you see with him, and so it's really hard for me to say that there's a big any issue there because sometimes you try to see things that you think you're seeing, right? And, you can kind of screw with your head a little bit. What I know is that he doesn't sit out. And then what you also see is a guy who seems to have a better understanding or growing understanding of when to press the hole and stay and when to, press it and bounce. It's a hard thing to learn because there's a lot of instincts involved in that. And sometimes it's a matter of, is the guy, where is the defender? And it's like, it takes a while to learn, but I think he was getting better with that at the end of last year. And that's an area where he seems to be pretty comfortable now. And I can see him having an increased role. Now, last year, he caught 30-some passes, but he didn't have a huge role in the pass game, despite his experience as a receiver in college. And part of that was they just wanted him to learn running back because he had a lot to learn there. And there's the path, the track of the ball, et cetera. That they just wanted to focus on that. I don't think it's going to cut into J.D. McKissic's time too much. I just think because J.D. is a third down back, a pure third down back, and his protection skills and all that stuff I think will help. But what it does do is it increases Gibson's role, and you can't keep him out there more. And I also think it gives him a more varied look. Like you can put McKissic, and we talked about this last year, but McKissic and Gibson out there at the same time, or McKissic, you could go Terry McLaurin, Cam Sims, Adam Humphries, or De'Ami Brown, whichever, and then Curtis Samuels and Antonio Gibson if you wanted to, in some kind of crazy looks. And then it's like, well, you can split another one out. You could take Samuel and split them out wide, or you could go 5 wide with that group and really put pressure on the defense that way. So I think if the more he can handle there, the more it allows them to maybe open up the playbook. I don't know that J.D. McKissic is going to have the same numbers as last year, not just because of Gibson, but because you have Samuel and De'Ami Brown there. But for them, it's really about opening up the playbook even more.
Mm-hmm.
John, thanks as always. We appreciate the intel. It's John Keim, covers the Washington football team for ESPN.com, @John_Keim on Twitter. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys.